Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Box Report. After not being with you guys last week, and after starting late this evening, for those who are checking us out live on YouTube, we're finally here. Uh, Episode 269 of Pound for Pound Box Report. I am your host, Michael. Joining me this week, Gail from Communities Digital News. What's going on, Gail?
Hey, those introductions were pretty easy this week, huh?
Indeed.
It's just a one-on-one tonight. It's the lightning round version of the show.
Yeah, and because of that, we're going to try to shoot through these topics very, very quickly. For those who are new to the show, Pound for Pound Box Report, live YouTube show and podcast, as well as blog discussing all things boxing. The modern wisdom of boxing is good. We will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, we will talk about it. If you want to find out more information about the show, check out the blog page, p4pboxreport.wordpress.com. That's the link. You check the top right portion of the blog page. You'll find links to where to find us all over social media, where to find us on all platforms that carry RSS feed. You know, your Spotify, your iTunes, your Google Play Music, your Google Podcasts, etc., as well as links to the donation links. Let donation be the best nation. We got Cash Me, PayPal. Got links to a Cash Me and PayPal donation app. So please, I don't care if it's $1, $2, 50 cents, $5. If you want to donate some more, please do. Again, let donation be the best nation. And finally, got a link to my fitness page. I am a coach for Beachbody Online, Beachbody On Demand. Hopefully, wink, wink, nod, nod, fingers crossed. Gail will be joining the team.
Got a fitness. I am in for November. Come on, folks. It's the holiday season.
Yeah, let's build together November fitness challenge.
That's right. Get ahead of that. Get ahead of that shit. You don't want waking up January 2nd saying, oh my God, what have I done to myself?
Yeah, the holiday seasons are soon upon us. If you're interested in anything Beachbody, if you're interested in any of the programs on Beachbody On Demand, Shakeology, any and everything else in between, please check out my fitness page on P4 on Pound for Pound Box Report blog page. Let's get things going. Like I said, we're going to try to rush through this show quickly since it's only the two of us so far. Let's start things by going back last week. Philadelphia, to be exact, light heavyweight unification bout between WBC champion Oleksandr Gvozdyk, IBF champion Artur Beterbiev, would turn out to be a very entertaining bout. Beterbiev ended up winning by 10th round stoppage. To me, he just wore down Gvozdyk over time. Gvozdyk, he fought very hard. He was valiant. But Gail, these two fought as amateurs with Beterbiev defeating Gvozdyk, stopped him in the second round, I believe. I got the sense, and I said this on Twitter, I got the sense that Beterbiev had the mindset of he was the grown man and Gvozdyk was the boy, the little boy, big brother, little brother, if you will. I always felt that even as Gvozdyk was landing his shots and doing well at points, that Gvozdyk knew that anytime he really turned it on and put on the pressure and the power, that he would eventually get to Gvozdyk. And he did just that. He didn't necessarily do it with headshots, but with body shots. But in the end of the day, very impressive performance by Beterbiev. I would argue the best of his career.
I wouldn't argue with you. I would absolutely agree with you. It's the best of his career, especially at this level against an opponent as good as Gvozdyk. He won by being the guy applying the pressure, not just the physical pressure, but the mental pressure. You know, it wasn't very far into the fight before I got this feeling that Gvozdyk, you know, he had lost it in his mind already. He was borderline deer in the headlights at moments. He just had no answer at all for Beterbiev, who was the embodiment of just, you know, a battering ram, or, you know, was like, I heard somebody describe it as When you see the heroes in Star Wars and they're up against the wall that's about, moving forward and about ready to squish them to death, you got the feeling that Beterbiev was the wall coming toward Gvozdyk, the nail, and he got nailed all right. It really was impressive because Beterbiev didn't do it with, a one punch knockout. He did it with tools that would work against virtually any sort of fighter. And those tools included boxing skills, not just strength. I mean, his ring generalship was phenomenal. So you look at that, I really expected Gvozdyk to put on a better performance than that. Um, where Beterbiev goes now, I think if I'm a potential opponent, I look at him and think, wow, I think the risk versus reward ratio needs to shift to a little bit higher reward to take the risk against this guy. At this point, I would put him right this day at the top of the light heavyweight division. That might change in about a week and a half, but right now, it's his.
Well, immediately upcoming for Beterbiev is a mandatory defense against in China. Um, Bob Arum, I caught this and I wrote about this for Three Kings. If you was paying attention after the bout, Arum basically told Beterbiev he didn't want this leaked out to the media, but he said his next fight is in China, a mandatory defense against. Uh, Give me a quick second. Let me catch his name. Meng Fanlong. It's going to happen in February, but I know we're being presumptuous here. But assuming he makes it, assuming that fight is a go, and Beterbiev were to win, how would you compare him to? Your thoughts on him in comparison to the other champions? I know Kovalev is fighting Canelo in November. Uh, you got Bivol; he's still out there. Um, where would you rank how where would you put Beterbiev? Would you put is it automatic that he's above them, or is it just because he's now a unified champion that you will just put him over the top? Would you make him uh is did he leave is there a gap now between Beterbiev? I'll put it this way: is there a gap now between Beterbiev and the rest of the lot at 175 pounds?
Uh, Certainly the title holders, and certainly the biggest challenger, which is, of course, Canelo at the moment. So let's assume that what we're talking about is Beterbiev versus Gvozdyk, who he just defeated, um, Bivol, Kovalev, and Canelo Alvarez. Until we see the fight between Kovalev and Canelo on November 2nd, with them being an unknown quantity without more information about their current state of skill and health, I would put Beterbiev first. And it isn't based on the belts. It's based on the fact that he absolutely dominated Gvozdyk. I mean, forget the scorecards, which were crazy if you ask me. Two of the scorecards that
Yeah, two of them had
had
Gvozdyk up
Gvozdyk.
by two. I didn't understand that.
That was nuts. Oh, only John Potteridge got it right out of New Jersey. He had Beterbiev up, I believe he had it 87 to 83 at the time of the stoppage. That was about right. I would have even maybe given Beterbiev another round. How anyone scored a majority of rounds to that point for Gvozdyk, I don't know. And one factor that I did notice, if you recall, it looked like Beterbiev had scored a knockdown in the first round. It was later ruled to be a slip using replay in the state of Illinois. Fantastic. What a good example of how replay can assist in a fight and provide clarity and fairness without slowing things down, without messing up the trajectory of the fight. It was perfectly done. So if your judges had on their scorecards a 10-8 for Beterbiev, in a round that Gvozdyk up to that point was winning the first round at least. They probably just changed their scorecards back to a 10-9 for Beterbiev. The correct score would have been to change it back to a 10-9 for Gvozdyk. Without the knockdown, he won the round. So that was a problem right there. And it, kind of went on from there. Nevertheless, Beterbiev learned one of the key lessons of boxing. If possible, do not leave it in the hands of the judges. He did not. He did not get screwed out of a victory. Until I see how Canelo Alvarez and Sergey Kovalev perform this weekend, I've got to have Beterbiev first. However, I do think a man willing to challenge him, and a good challenge, is actually Dmitry Bivol, because Bivol isn't going to get in there and brawl with him. Bivol has far better boxing skills, superb footwork. He's not going to stand in front of Beterbiev and let him hit him. And he might be able to find that, hidden key and turn it in the lock and figure out how he can get to Beterbiev and score and roll up those rounds in a way Gvozdyk actually did do with some of the judges. But Bivol could make it stick. So there might be less risk for him. The fight I think we'd all love to see, because it would be such a great grudge match, is Beterbiev versus Kovalev. But if Kovalev gets the tar beat out of him November 2nd, I'm not sure how much of an appetite there would be for that, especially by Kovalev. He might just say, I got a big, big payday. I'm done. We'll see. So I think we will know a lot more probably when all the chairs shuffle around on the cruise ship probably by the beginning of next year. And I will say, we met with Canelo Alvarez today for a media event in San Diego where he trains. And he more or less said he's going to reassess where he's at after the first of the year, no matter what the outcome of the fight is. He'll make his decision. Where is he going to fight? What division? How does he plan to move forward? We will not know right away after the fight.
Yeah, and based on what you were telling me before we got things underway, you was at the workout session for Canelo. The move up in weight, he's really enjoying, because based on what you were telling me, he looked terrific today in his workout session, looking stronger and hitting harder than ever.
Looking great, looking in phenomenal condition, hitting exceptionally hard, and in great spirits. We've seen a very taciturn, stiff-lipped Canelo recently, especially at the announcement of the fight. He was pretty darn frosty about his relationship with his promoter, Oscar De La Hoya, and Golden Boy, and it sort of infused a lot of things that day. Today is the first time I can recall in 4 or 5 years where I would call Canelo cheerful, happy-go-lucky. He was in great spirits. He was making requests of music from the mariachi band, live band that was there. He was singing. He was messing around with his trainers, Eddie and Chepo Reynoso, in particular Chepo, the older man, the father, who's a very lighthearted man by personality. He was having a damn good time. I would say better than I've seen him in public in years. And whether light heavyweight suits him, and that's the reason for his good mood, he's not hangry. He's not feeling the heat of trying to make weight. Who can say? Maybe he feels so much more powerful staying at this weight to train, that it's given him this new jolt of personality and energy. Whatever it is, it's working for him right now. And you'll see the videos start popping up, I'm sure, as early as tonight through the rest of the week. I encourage you to get on your favorite YouTube channel and take a look. I think you'll be impressed. And once Sergey Kovalev sees some of this, I think he needs to start praying to the Virgin of Guadalupe to help him.
And if you're checking us out live on YouTube or watching it or watch this on YouTube later, if you check out the Avi from Gail, that is from the Canelo workout session, and yes, that is a new tattoo he's sporting, Canelo on the forearm.
Yes, he is. We did ask him about that. These eyes right there, and it's a certain icon in Mexico, and it's the eyes of something or other. And I must admit, I'm going to have to go back to my notes and see what he said. Somebody else asked him, "Well, how many tattoos do you have now, Canelo?" And he had to think about it, and he said, "I'm not sure, 10 or 11." And one of the guys that knows him says, "You have 10." He said, "Okay." His tattoo selection is all a little bit seemingly unconnected and random, but they all do mean something to him. I think what you might also see visible is a date. That was the date of his professional debut. So that one mystery I can clear up for you.
Let's move on. Since we weren't here last week, I want to talk about some fights that took place the weekend of the 12th. Most notably, the card that took the DAZN card in Chicago, headlined by Oleksandr Usyk making his heavyweight debut against Chazz Witherspoon. Usyk winning by 7th round stoppage. Your impressions of Usyk, former unified undisputed cruiserweight champion, moving up to heavyweight. A lot of people feel, myself included, that based on the skill set of Usyk, he can do damage in this division, even possibly win a world title. Your impressions of what you saw from him against Witherspoon. Look, we felt that Usyk was going to dominate Witherspoon and defeat him soundly, and he did just that. You can't get nothing really from this, but yet still, Wilder basically had some words about Usyk, said he's too small. Usyk basically had a funny response to what Wilder said. Usyk is already talking Wilder. He's talking Joshua. I think he's top of the rankings already in the WBO. You'll break down at what you saw from him and your thoughts on him moving forward in the heavyweight division.
I think everybody making any pronouncements right now about his place in the division needs to slow their roll. For Pete's sake, it was a few rounds. And I think the outcome of the fight for Usyk was informed more by the fact that he has been out of the ring a long time and he's coming back from a fairly significant injury. A bicep tear, a bicep injury is no joke. Soft tissue injuries like that can be really difficult to come back from. They take a long, long time to be 100%, if ever. It's not like a bone. You're honestly way better off breaking a bone than you are damaging a key muscle and tendon structure like that. So what I saw was a lot of ring rust. If you noticed early in the fight, the commentators mentioned it, seeing Usyk shaking out his arms and his upper torso. I don't care how much you train. When you get into the ring and it's the real deal, your adrenaline's rolling. It feels a lot different. The bright lights are on. The fans are in your face. And you can stiffen up. You can feel a little different than you did during training, just different enough to feel uncomfortable. So I think that's what we saw, a very rusty Usyk. Now, even a rusty Usyk is going to have no problem with an opponent like Chazz Witherspoon. No disrespect to him, however. He was in shape enough to be able to say yes to a fight on short notice. Good for him. A lot of guys would not have taken it. A lot of guys didn't take that fight long before he came along. That's why Usyk was originally stuck with an opponent like Tyrone Spong. I mean, seriously? They had to go find a former kickboxer turned boxer, sweet science boxer, to face Usyk. So I give Witherspoon a lot of credit for giving it a go, but he was just one big moving punching bag for Usyk. So I think we've got to see Usyk in at least one or two more fights with decent quality opponents. Now that he's sort of knocked the ring rust off, anybody ranking him anywhere near the top is smoking something or very anxious for a new face in the division. Frankly, ranking him anywhere in that division after one fight based on his cruiserweight record, I have a problem with that. He's ultra talented, but when you go up a division like he is, you really step back a few steps in your career road. And I need to see at least one or two more fights. So hopefully we'll see him somewhat early in 2020 so that he can get in. I'd love to see him get in 3 fights next year. Now, I don't think he'll fight 4 times, but we can always hope.
Couple of fights on the undercard of that Usyk Witherspoon bout I want to focus on. Women's bout, unification bout at 140 pounds between, Jessica McCaskill, Erica Farias. I think BCBA super lightweight title. They fought earlier this year in June, I believe it was. Very good fight, disputed decision. Many people felt that Farias won, but McCaskill ended up winning by decision. I expected a similarly good bout in the rematch. We didn't exactly get that. Uh, this was hard to watch. A lot of grabbing, a lot of holding, a lot of tugging. McCaskill won, but the fight went in such a way you really couldn't get nothing from it. Were you as frustrated as I was by the excessive holding?
Yeah, I really expected a much better fight, action fight like the first one as you did. Farias is a great opponent. She really is. But for whatever reason, she decided to make it ugly. And, there wasn't a lot McCaskill could do but to just get right in the mud with her. And she actually dominated Farias far more than I thought she might. The first fight was dandy, and we were all very excited to see this rematch. But McCaskill did prove, she is for real. She handled it as best she could, got the win, got out of there without too much damage. And this sets her up nicely for some really good opportunities. She's worked awfully hard with very little support or fanfare. So I hope she rides this for a few really good visible fights. She's got those titles now. And I think that she is owed some respect now in the overall women's game. And, if there's a women's pound for pound list, I wouldn't put her in the top half. I might put her near the bottom half of the top 10, though. She is performing really, really well.
And finally, on that card, listen, I've been one to praise Dmitry Bivol. We just talked about him in terms of in the context of Berterbiev's stoppage win over Gvozdyk. Fought a guy by the name of Lenin Castillo. Castillo, he gave Marcus Brown a good bout, knocked him down as a matter of fact in that bout. As much as I want to praise Bivol, I think he's the most skilled fighter in the division, but his performance against Castillo left you wanting more. Sure, Castillo, he could have put more of an effort in there, considering this is a world title opportunity. But at the same time, for Bivol, it's like, man, that was just my only response to watching that fight. Just very, very meh. Your reaction?
Same, same. Bivol's early fights were so exciting to watch. Not only did he have the skill set, which nobody denies that, but he scored some crazy impressive knockouts. I think what's happening as he tried to explain after the fight as the crowd booed him, which I think he was really rocked and shocked by that. He explained, listen, there's no upside in this for me to take any risk, right? He could win all day. He could roll up rounds all damn day fighting the way he did with somebody like Castillo. Castillo couldn't touch him. And Castillo was not a bad opponent. He's got skills. He was absolutely a legitimate opponent. What Bivol is trying to say is, listen, why would I get into a brawl with this guy, risk getting injured? I don't think he has any fear of losing, but why would I mix it up and get rough with this guy just for your entertainment before I find myself in a big money, big name fight? I am not going to risk that for your fun and games tonight, you boxing fans. Now, once he gets across the ring from, let's say, an Artur Beterbiev, a Canelo Alvarez, which I think honestly that's a very good possibility. At that point, the risk to reward ratio is worth it to him to get in there and see what he can do. What he's telling you is, listen, I'm preserving my possible future income stream, and I can't do that if I behave in a risky manner here and lose a fight. He's not going to let that happen. And that, his English is quite good, but it's not that good to get into the weeds and describe it that way. I guarantee you that's what he's thinking is, listen, I just need to keep the O's on the record. I need to stay busy. Nobody's thinking this is a world beater contest. So honestly, I can't blame him. This is his livelihood and his life. He is not going to roll the dice and risk, at least a 7, if not an 8-figure payday. I get it.
Sorry, I see Daniel and Daniel from the inscriber, Jacob from Jab Hook up there joined us.
Hey, it's nice to join the party, gentlemen.
I'll bring this. I'll bring them in the conversation by going back and getting their opinion of Bertebiev's win over Gvozdyk. First you, Daniel, and then you, Jacob.
Ooh. Well, the way I would put it is, Gvozdyk definitely earned his nickname, but for all the wrong reasons. Unfortunately, he did put up a good fight against Beterbiev, but Beterbiev is one of those guys that just hits like a mule, and it became a war of attrition after a bit. Even though Gvozdyk did have some good rounds, but ultimately it's just that the tougher guy won, and I give hats off to Beterbiev. He was if you think about it, out of all the current champions, he was technically the late bloomer. He came in later. He had the fewer amount of fights. He had situations with injuries, situations with promotion outfits. And ultimately now he's in a place where he's become the lineal light heavyweight champion. He holds 2 belts. And the only thing that could stand in his way from getting the other ones is network issues. Should Canelo beat Kovalev? And we know Bivol's situation. So that was a good fight. I'll admit that was wildly, wildly entertaining, and it was probably one of the better fights that I've seen in a while when it came to light heavyweight, as far as one guy really imposing his will on another.
Sorry, I was on mute. I'll go to you, Jacob. Berterbiev has a reputation of just being just a puncher, straightforward puncher. I was pleasantly surprised by how the diversity of his attack. Uh, he used the jab in there uh, in subtle ways. People are not. He's known for punches up top, but he end up what he broke Gvozdyk down with body shots. Really, at first in the beginning and middle of the fight, before eventually knocking him out with headshots. Your reaction to not just the fight itself, but what you saw from Beterbiev, who did some things in there we really haven't seen from him before in previous fights, at least in recent fights.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things and you mentioned it, that I noticed a lot about this fight with Gvozdyk and Beterbiev, is that he did invest in the body, and he did hurt, Gvozdyk multiple times, or at least it looked like to me he was visibly hurt, and he, kind of shied away. Um, and he's a to me a true light heavyweight. Um, and I'm not sure if we're going to talk about it, but like maybe future matchups. But like what Canelo's doing, moving up and weight. Um, I think if he went against someone like Beterbiev, he would find a lot of problems, because he bangs the body good. He's a hard puncher. He got hit more than a few times by Lenel, and he stood up to it. In his last previous fights, he had been hurt, a couple times, so he had some kind of scary moments, but he's shown that he has a decent enough chin to kind of weather that storm and stick to his game plan of basically almost like a Terminator, just eventually finding his spots to land his power punches and hurt his opponent. But he's going to be tough to beat, as long as I think his one weakness, if I had to name one, is that he can get a little wild sometimes and want to throw the hard shots, without setting them up, like he did in some of this fight, where he was, using his jab and to do effective combinations, and not just throwing the hard shot right off the bat. But he did do a little bit of that too, where he would, just throw a nice hook or an overhand, and but he's going to be, like Daniel said, it was a really good fight. I gave Gvozdyk more than a few rounds. I mean, he was competitive, and he was move as long as he was moving, and getting his punches off, he was winning some of those rounds. But eventually, Beterbiev just was too much for him to sustain. He was just once he was landing those body shots, and then eventually that opened up the head, and he basically had him exhausted. And the ref stepped in and stopped it, and kind of I think it was a good stoppage.
Uh, Quickly follow up question, gentlemen. Gail made an argument that because of his performance against Gvozdyk and the fact that he has more than one title now, unified champ, uh, not undisputed, but has a unified champion now, IBF and BC. She made an argument that you could put Beterbiev or Beterbiev, however you want to pronounce it, at the top right now in 175-pound division. First you, Jacob, and then you, Daniel. Where would you rank him right now based on what you saw uh, this past weekend?
I would rank him the number one light heavyweight right now. Kovalev, for his accomplishments that he's had, he's definitely on the backside of his career. If you look at their last, whatever 5 fights, he's had some tough moments. Even his last fight, and then with Bivol, you know, I think that would be a very interesting matchup, but Beterbiev just seems like he has that killer instinct that Bivol doesn't always have. So it would be it would be a very interesting matchup to kind of be who is the king of light heavyweight. But right now, it's got to be Beterbiev.
Would you agree, Daniel?
And right now, as it currently stands, I would say yes. Because of the merit, because he holds two belts, because he technically now holds the lineal belt. Because remember, Gvozdyk took that from Adonis Stevenson. So by merit, you have to do it. Skills wise, among the champions, I would probably still say Bivol in a way. He's probably the most skilled among the three. But he has the most advantage, like I said, because he was a late bloomer that came into it. He has the fewest fights, and we know the situation with Kovalev. Kovalev is on the back end of his career, even with how good he's looked under Buddy McGirt. And Bivol realistically can realistically go down to super middleweight and actually do pretty well. And he's already suggested he's willing to do so. So that does put Beterbiev in that driver's seat for the moment. And it'll probably be for some time unless he can get a unification with Bivol or a unification with like the winner of Canelo Kovalev, even though I think Top Rank has some other plans in mind already, from what I've heard.
Kind of bring you up to date in terms of what we were just talking about before I added you onto the stream. We were talking about the design card in Chicago while we were talking about Bivol's uh, meh performance against Castillo. I want your opinions, Daniel and Jacob, about Usyk and his win over Witherspoon. Can you gather anything from that? Or is it still a wait and see in terms of how he will fare in the heavyweight division?
Well, it's Chazz Witherspoon and late notice. So I had to take it in for a grain of salt. He did come in very, very late. But Usyk did show in that fight an instinct to want to finish it. That was one of actually some of the criticisms we had early on when he stopped going to Mr. Bashir and actually started going to like I said Russ Abner. But now he has the killer instinct going in. He kind of knows he has to have that in the heavyweights. And while I don't take much out of it because it's Chazz Witherspoon on a late notice. Maybe his next opponent he'll get something there like maybe a Carlos Takam or maybe a David Allen in that area. But you should expect that from it.
Do you share the same? Do you echo the same sentiments, Jacob? Essentially, that basically that this is Chazz Witherspoon we're talking about. Let's pump the brakes before we truly evaluate Usyk vis-a-vis the heavyweights.
I don't have mixed feelings on this in the sense that I think Usyk is very talented, but I never really thought of him as a finisher. A guy that has like incredible punching power. He's more of a boxer. He uses that jab to keep distance. He moves really well. And he basically just banks the points. And sometimes with some of these boxers, they always say styles make fights. Sometimes when you have a certain individual in front of you, you kind of like fight to your competition. That it's happened many times before where you would think that, oh, this guy's going to get blown out because, this guy's superior, but for some reason they just don't do it. And they just kind of coast to a victory. In a way. So, and again, this is his first fight at heavyweight. A lot of who he was supposed to fight and, everything that was happening. I mean, there was a lot of, like in boxing, things happen. So, they try to salvage it as best they could and find an opponent, which is no fault of Usyk's. And so hopefully he'll step up the competition and get a few more fights in. But it's interesting because he has the confidence of of a champion, because he's already kind of, talking a little bit of, call it a little bit of trash, in the sense that he doesn't think that, he would have problems with Deontay Wilder and and basically any of the heavyweights at the top. I think he could find some trouble with those guys. Each guy kind of presents an interesting dynamic, or what they bring to the table. So I definitely want to see those fights, but I think he needs to give him a few more fights in the heavyweight division, and then we can see um, where he stands, and if he's deserving of getting a shot at the crown. And because we also have Joshua Ruiz too coming up. We got Ortiz, Wilder, so there's still some dust that needs to settle before we make any moves.
Um, Going to go to the news here. Going to go to you, Gail, and trigger warning. I apologize for this first off. Send you a bit of a trigger warning here. Some disturbing news regarding one Oscar De La Hoya, accused of sexual assault, sexual battery, gender violence, negligence. Um, Court papers filed this week in California, 10-page lawsuit. Papers were obtained by ESPN on the 17th of October. I'm not going to go into the details of the lawsuit because it's very graphic and disturbing. Uh, but, Gail, listen, De La Hoya, highly successful in the ring, highly successful as a promoter, but we all know he has had his issues, has had his troubles outside of the ring. This lawsuit, even though he denies the allegations, sadly, another example of that.
It is a very sad situation. No matter what you think of it, no matter what you believe at this early stage, these are allegations. This is not evidence or proof yet. That will need to go through the courts. But there are very, very serious allegations being made. If there's any evidence to back up even a fraction, it's an ugly situation. De La Hoya has suffered from the same kind of troubling substance abuse issues, which are really the heart of his problem, that a lot of former athletes do. When somebody has left a limelight as big and bright as De La Hoya used to stand under, that's a rough transition back to real life. I don't care how much money you've made. I don't care what your station in life is. Some men and ladies make the transition well, extremely well, some not so well, and some do not make it well at all. It's rough. And the ones that don't make it well tend to turn to things to self-medicate with. That's my guess as to what's happened with Oscar. And then the need for self-medication escalates into another problem all on its own that then causes a cascading effect of incredibly regrettable, sometimes ugly, vicious behavior. The courts will see this through. I think many of the folks at Golden Boy, have put a structure in place to where they need to just keep the business running, and they've had to resign themselves internally, saying, our figurehead, he will be who he is, and he's freely acknowledged battling a lot of demons. So they have a structure where they can do right by all their fighters and all their employees. Let's not forget, a lot of people, their jobs depend on that organization running well every day. I think they've learned how to get along without him and around him. I'm sure they far prefer he be with them and in good health and on the right side of things, but they'll carry on without him if they have to. It's It's extremely ugly. I hope whatever happens, first of all, the truth is found between all the parties involved. If punishment is needed, punishment needs to be rendered. I don't care who you are. But we need to let the courts take their course at this point. And if it turns out that Oscar's biggest problem is, once again, his own demons, he needs to continue to try to battle and beat them. But it's a long, hard battle. A lot of us have watched family and friends go through it, and we know how hard it can be.
I see Daniel had to step away for a quick second. So I'll go to you, Jacob. I think Gail kind of put the key word on this demons. The fact that there's even allegations of this kind being directed towards De La Hoya. Demons, man. He's battling demons.
And many people battle demons. Least we forget that celebrities, boxers, whatever. They're all still people. Everybody has their crosses to bear and has their issues, and he has a long history of it. Most notably his substance abuse problems. Going to rehab and whatnot, and most people will tell you that anybody that's has an addiction problem, they never really, they live with it every day to day. It never really goes away. I mean, they can relapse at any point. So, you know, I'm not, I'm not surprised, because of his, his looks and, maybe how he was treated and how he was thought of to be, this, again, the golden boy. Sometimes when these people of that stature, they wield so much power, it can go to their heads. Now, I'm not saying that, I don't know the details of this accusation, as probably as well as most people, but um, you know, there could be some truth to it. Maybe it's somewhere in the middle. But again, I agree with Gail. Justice needs to be served. Um, and hopefully they are able to find out the truth, and um, you know golden boy can kind of move on from that.
Yeah, ultimately, that's what you want to find. That the truth does come. That the truth does come to light, um, for everybody's sake. But again, this is just another ugly, ugly story involving one Oscar De La Hoya. Just sad uh, overall. Something that you really just don't want to hear. You just don't want to hear about regarding anyone. Let's move on to some positive news. I will say, I'm bringing it right back to you, Jacob. Positive news. This is involving women's boxing. Yes, I know. Clarissa Shields, unified undisputed middleweight champion. She calls herself the GOAT, but there still is an argument out there that Cecilia Braekhus, who's undisputed unified welterweight champion, and has been undisputed unified welterweight champion since 2014, by the way, that she could be the GOAT, that she is the best, when the top women's pound for pound fighter in the world. Well, news broke yesterday that she has signed a multi-fight deal with DAZN. Given the roster that DAZN already has with Jessica McCaskill, who we talked about earlier in the show, Katie Taylor, who's moving up to 140 pounds. You got Serrano out there. So say what you want about Matchroom, but from a women's boxing perspective, the signing of Breakers, it adds more to an already impressive roster.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm the thing I'm most glad for this deal is a woman of Braxis's accomplishments and standards, that she got a deal, that hopefully it was a lucrative deal. And you know it's nice to see these, I'm just going to call them, they're fighters, boxers get, they're just, whether it's payment or recognition. There needs to be more of that, and I think that will create more desire for other fighters, women fighters, to come in and want to take up the sport. If there's a place for them, and they can, if they can, win and be successful, then they can, come to the table. And we've seen a lot of really, I think, really good fights with the women's divisions. So I'm really optimistic and happy that it's kind of charging ahead. I know Gail's probably gonna bring it up, but I mean, I still think that they need to, I agree with her on the whole, 3-minute rounds and that aspect. But again, I think we're making they might be slow steps, but definitely positive baby steps in the right direction, with them being, getting deals like this, being featured on, whether it's Showtime or DAZN cards, not buried in the undercards, but, getting some prominent features. And, she got to fight twice at the StubHub, and, I think HBO's last show. But as far as, if we're talking, I still would have Shields as the best right now. But it's only because I think Braekhus, for her accomplishments and what she was able to do, I believe she is on the back end of her career. I believe she did lose against Callie Reese, and her in that fight that she got the decision on. So, and it's no knock on her. I just think that it's kind of a changing of the guard. I think Shields is the kind of the up and comer, and Braekhus is kind of, she had her place, and she might be a victim of circumstance, in the sense that, maybe she didn't get a bunch of the big fights because women's boxing wasn't as, every year it gets a little bit more popular and they get a little bit more recognition. And so unfortunately there's got to be those people that were fighting at the beginning that missed that window, that future people, they basically open the doors for them, but they're not going to be able to, because they get older and less accomplished, they're not going to be able to enjoy the fruits of their labor, basically. So, but I mean, she still has had a great career, and she'll still go down as one of the all-time greats. And I think, I'm glad for her that she got that deal.
Let's see. Are you back, Daniel? I don't think Daniel's back, so I'll go to Gail. Your reaction to Braekhus signing a deal with Matchroom DAZN?
Excellent deal. DAZN has really become sort of the heir to HBO boxing, and Braekhus was aligned with HBO before their demise, before they decided to leave the boxing business entirely. It's a smart move. And let's also remember, Braekhus has a far bigger following in Europe. So Matchroom, should they choose to match her up in fights in Great Britain or in Europe where she could put 10,000, 15,000 people in the seats, they're in the position to do so. Their business here in the United States is, I would say, still a minor part of what they do. So it's the right fit for her. I do agree that her absolute best fighting days are probably behind her. That doesn't mean she doesn't have some good fights left. I still think she's the quality fighter in women's boxing until Claressa Shields has a little bit longer track record, proven otherwise. In many cases, Claressa, no knock on her, has had sort of an open road to her success. I think if she is matched against certain other talents, we'll see her be challenged a little more. And one of the things I would love to see is a rematch between Claressa and her very first professional opponent, Franchon Cruz DAZN, who is really coming on. And I think that I think it'd be very close to a 50-50 fight if that were to happen again. But that's off in the future. Let's see what Braekhus still has to offer. I'd still rather see someone of her quality, even at this later stage of her career, than somebody who's never going to get there in the first place. I think she's still got a lot to offer. But I do agree with Jacob. She lost that fight to Kelly Reese. Kelly Reese brought it. That was a great performance by her.
Indeed. Reading some comments here. In the chat. She said from EJ Boxing Live, shout out to the brother from joining us, listening to us on the show. He says that first of all, it says good show to everyone. Appreciate it. He says that Shields is the best women's fighter today. He says that talked about this situation with Shields and Habazin. We talked about that a few weeks ago. Give an update on that. Shields' brother was formally arrested. I believe he was charged as well. I think he's presently in jail in a Flint area jail right now. I don't know any further updates beyond that, but he has been formally arrested and in charge. And had a lively discussion about that on EJ's show yesterday. I personally did. I see Daniel is back, so I'll go to him and get his quick opinion on Braekhus in the deal that she signed with Matchroom DAZN.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that she did sign it, because it's like we mentioned it before with Gail and with others when we talked about HBO. A lot of the people that worked on HBO wound up working in DAZN, and who happened to be the main event of that last HBO card, it was Cecilia Braekhus. So I'm not surprised in that aspect of it, and in a way, it's just a smart move, because when you look at the landscape, obviously PBC, even though they did a lot, especially if they had the Hardy fights and the Amanda Serrano fights, they may not have enough of a space where they can highlight Cecilia Braekhus. And we know, obviously, she can't go to Showtime because of the whole Clarissa Shield situation that you just spoke about. But the zone works out because she'll be able to get on the platform in the U.S. She'll be working with people that have worked with her before. And she doesn't have to come to the U.S. mainly. Like, remember, she could sign a match and she could pretty much try to stay in Europe and focus her career, even though she's wanted to do it. So it's a good deal. And what up, BJ? And ultimately, we have to see it for what it is, luckily, because it's going to be her swan song until whoever it's going to be, whether it's going to be Serrano, whether it's going to be Shields, whether it's going to be Katie Taylor, whether it's going to be McCaskill or Nicola Adams. Like I said, there's a lot of good candidates. Good candidates right now that could easily take the place of it's going to be the next person that takes women's boxing forward. So I like the move. I'm just going to see what the fights are.
We talked earlier about the Usyk Witherspoon card. Within that card, there was unfortunate tragedy that occurred as Patrick Day, 27-year-old fighter, fought and suffered a knockout loss to Charles Conwell. Unfortunately, when he was knocked out, head hit hard on the canvas, had to be carried out on a stretcher to an ambulance. Body was convulsing, suffered seizures, had to have emergency surgery, and a few days later after the bout, um, unfortunately, uh, passed away. We talk about when boxing is good, when boxing is bad. We talk about it. Well, when there's tragedy, we also talk about it, and we try to pay tribute uh, to that fighter. And going to take the opportunity now to uh, pay tribute to fallen soldier and Patrick Day. Uh, Good kid, good hard earned kid. So many boxers and managers and people associated with the sport have sent their condolences, have sent their well wishes in regards to him and his family. From all accounts that I've read, um, just a highly decent, fun loving guy who just fell to the unfortunate pitfalls that comes with this hard trade. Um, I'm gonna start the conversation with you, Daniel. Uh, uh, your thoughts on one Patrick Day?
Oh, let's start to talk about when it comes to tragedy because when you look at Patrick Day's story, when you look at Patrick Day's life, he isn't a typical boxing story where like he had no chance to do it, or this was his only way out. He could have been something. He could have been in the medical field. He could have been a doctor. He chose boxing. He chose to get into that ring and subject himself to injury because he loved the sport. And this fight it wasn't a beating. It wasn't like he was getting a hellacious beating, like where you can easily try to tell a guy, no, we need to stop the fight. We need to stop the fight. It wasn't that type of fight. But the way he fell just really, really, really did not work well. Really, really, really ultimately, like I said, it cost another cautionary tale. And unfortunately, over the past few years, whether it has been a bad fall or whether it has been really bad corner work, we've had a lot of these incidents, whether it's permanent injury or death in the sport. And it's something that we have to look into, something that we as fans, something that people that cover the sport as reporters, people that are in the camps have to dig themselves into it because this is a dangerous sport. There's a reason Jim Lampley said you don't play boxing. It's a dangerous sport. It's a dangerous profession. You are shortening your life every time you step foot into the ring. But the amount of incidents that have been happening lately, whether, like I said, injury or death, is starting to accumulate at a rapid pace right now. And it may just be that we're noticing now because there's a lot more media avenues, or it may be something that we have to address, that we have to look into as a sport, and maybe see that we may have to change a couple of things in order to have less of this, because this is unavoidable. Tragedy and death in the sport like this is unavoidable, but it's a lot of happening, and it's been happening too much in a too short of a time.
Been happening and been happening. Unfortunately, too often uh, this year, Jacob. I think this is maybe the third, quite possibly the fourth death that we've seen uh, this year in the sport. Um, as Daniel alluded to, quoting Jim Lampley, you don't play boxing. Um, this is not for the meek. This is not for the timid. When Nigel Benn said years ago, I put my life on the line every time I step in the ring, he's absolutely right. Um, and sadly, this is another example of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a painful reminder of, the fragile, the fragile state of, just life in general, because like Daniel said, and even the other boxers that have passed away, it wasn't like a brutal back and forth war where a guy was taking an, an extreme amount of punishment. It's just one of those things that happens, and it's not just boxing. It could be any sport, just fluke things that happen. Um, and by all accounts, and again, I didn't know the man, but everything that I've read about him, it just seemed like he was just a really good, good guy, good human being, you know, very positive, and just, loved the sport of boxing, and just was a good guy to have around. He wasn't like a heel, or somebody that has a chip on his shoulder. Um, and maybe has an attitude, or does did a bunch of bad things. So in his age too, that makes it even more tragic in the sense that he seemed like he had so much life to live, and joy to take out of it. But yeah, I mean, it's been a tough year for boxing in general, with these tragedies, and a lot of young guys, and whatnot. But you know, um, hopefully, like Daniel said, hopefully they can figure out things to make it less of a occurrence. But I do agree with him in a sense that I mean, boxing is we know it's dangerous. They talk about it all the time about boxers say I'm risking my life, and it's true. Um, so I don't know that they can ever avoid these type of things, because like I said before, it wasn't like it was a bang 'em, rock 'em, sock 'em fight. I think it's just he got knocked out, and the way his head hit the canvas, it just it did the unfortunate job of ending his life eventually. So you know my heart goes out to his family, and also to the Conwell people. I believe he unrehearsed, unforced. He wrote a very thoughtful message on his Instagram, battling with this tragedy, in the sense that he wasn't trying to take Day's life. He was just fighting, and he's struggling. I think right now, when you've taken someone's life, that you weren't trying to take, or that you're potentially the cause of that, even though that wasn't his intention. He's struggling with um, what he's gonna do. I know he said he's gonna move on, but I don't, he might never be the same again, because that, I think that's gonna always linger in his mind. When he when he throws a punch, or when maybe when he's going in for what we call the kill, um, you know, unfortunately named, but so I'm glad that he was able to get his feelings out about the situation, and I think the Day camp and family have been very receptive of that, and letting him know that it isn't his fault. It just the tragedy is what it is, and hopefully we can remember Day as the person and the joy that he brought, and you know hopefully we'll be able to do things to make boxing more safe.
Thank you for your words, Jacob. Uh, Not just in terms of Patrick Day, but also in regards to Conwell. As you said, this is not something he wanted. He was just doing his job, and as a result of his doing his job, something like this happened, and uh, you never know how someone is going to react to that. Uh, will he be the same? No. Even if he fights the same from a mental perspective, this has to change him. This will change him. So you have to have thoughts and concerns for him as well. Uh, and I also want to say, kind of indirectly, uh, shout out to, I think it's Jamal Charlo, who stepped up and paid the expenses for the pay for the funeral service and whatnot. So I gotta give a shout out to I think it's Jamal. I think it's Jamal Charlo who stepped up to the plate in that regard. That's something he didn't have to do, but he understanding that he's part of a fraternity, part of a boxing family. He knows the risk that you go through every time you step in the ring. He did a really, really commendable thing. Uh, Going to you, Gail. We are all media, I guess, in one way or another. Whether writing about it, whether doing podcasts. Uh, I present this to you, Gail, from a media perspective because you not only write about it, you're a regular on this podcast, but you're also close to the fighters. You're at ringside covering fights. We just talked earlier about your appearance at the Canelo Alvarez media workout. So you interview these fighters as well. From someone who has that kind of close interaction with the fighters, how does this impact you?
Me personally,
Yes.
all of us know what boxing is about. We all know it's dangerous. It's just like any fan of the NFL by now knows it's dangerous. Anybody who watches auto racing knows it's very dangerous. Anybody who watches downhill skiing or competitive rock climbing knows it's dangerous. There are a lot of things in life that are dangerous that human beings do anyway. The important thing is to minimize unnecessary risk and go into it with your eyes wide open about what you're getting into. I always have told people who ask me about boxing and the athletes in it that very few people get into boxing from an affluent background because they don't have to. They don't have to take the risk. Patrick Day was one of the exceptions to the rule. His mother was a translator for the United Nations. His father is a physician. They're natives of Haiti. They're multilingual. They're successful professionals. Patrick Day had his college degree. This is the last guy from a stereotypical point of view that you would think would go into boxing. The one thing that perhaps we could take heart from is he didn't need to box. He was not one of those guys who grew up in a town, with no running water, with dirt floors in the homes, who saw boxing as a way to survive. And there were a lot of guys like that. Hell, Manny Pacquiao was one of those kids. Patrick Day wasn't one of those kids. He didn't need to do this to survive, to eat, to get out of poverty. The only reason he pursued professional boxing as a career is he loved it that much that the risk was worth it to him. So it's a long philosophical discussion I'm sure many fans have had with the assistance of some adult beverages or other substances saying, is it better to live life on those terms, going out, doing exactly what you love the most, no matter the risk? Is that worth it? Is it better to pass away knowing the reason was the source of maybe your ultimate happiness in life? There are a lot of people who take other risks that are similar, and our sport is not the only one that's terribly dangerous. In fact, statistically speaking, there are a lot of sports more dangerous than boxing. I just mentioned a few. Auto racing is perhaps one of the most dangerous. Nobody's talking about ending auto racing. What we have talked about over the years is how do we remove the unnecessary risks, make things safer? So we need to talk in large part about doing what we can to prohibit fighters from getting so dehydrated, either during training, during the weigh-in period, or before a fight. A lot of the problems that happen with a head injury that goes south to the degree it did with Patrick Day is due to dehydration. You know, the brain floats in a protective covering under the skull is in essentially fluid and water. Water is very dense. You know, is a very protective device. You dehydrate, you're dehydrated not only in your body, you're dehydrated around your brain. And that is frequently, down the road, we find out, one of the serious contributing causes to injuries. So we need to think about that. What we as fans can do right now is do not ever, ever criticize a referee for stopping a fight, and do not ever call a fighter that stops or a corner that stops a fight for a fighter quitters, ever. They hear us. They know we think that way. And they'll frequently not want to take the heat on boxing, Twitter, or social, or anywhere else. They hear it. They hear the boos. They will go forward taking risks they don't need to take because they don't want to take that kind of heat from fans. So fans, I implore you, I beg of you, you know, no matter what you think in your heart about whether a referee should have stopped the fight or guys decided not to come out for the next round, you know what? Grant them the dignity of their decision, because it is that dangerous. And we aren't in their shoes. We aren't the referee looking in those eyes. We do not know. That's one tiny little thing we can do out of respect to a kid like Patrick Day. I do think also, in closing, you know, Patrick Day, not too many months ago, had a wicked tough fight with Carlos Adames. It was on the undercard of the Come Beltran fight. You know, Day put up an absolutely tremendous fight, a really, really good effort in a fight he lost. You know, we may be looking at more accumulated damage than anyone realized from that fight to the fight with Conwell. Conwell was really having his way with him. Day was too brave for his own good. Nobody stopped him. He'd already been dropped twice before he came out for the round in which he was dropped for what ultimately was the final time. So we all need to think about our role in this as well.
My brothers over at Three Kings Boxing, 2K, and Bo, who you heard on the show numerous times. They used to box, and they talk about how when you begin this boxing thing from an amateur on, you kind of sign an oath, if you will, that a silent agreement that you know what you're getting into, and you're willing to put those risks up before, and you are agreeing to deal with those risks as soon as you step in the ring. I say that not to sound like a sadist, sound insensitive or anything like that, but this is one of the dangers that can take place as soon as you agree to step inside that squared circle, as soon as you agree to put on the 8-10 ounce gloves. You don't want this to happen to anybody, particularly, you just don't. But it's even more sad when it happens to someone who, by all accounts, was such a beacon of light, particularly outside of the ring. You can only grieve, uh, send thoughts and prayers and condolences to his family, and his loved ones, and celebrate uh, his life outside the ring and the contributions that he displayed inside the ring. Um, Sad, of course. You never want to see this. Uh, Boxing, we will move on, but again, it's just something that you just don't want to see, and you celebrate And we here pay our condolences to the career and the life of one Patrick Day. May he rest in peace. May he rest in power. Um, Going to try to move on from that heavy conversation and move on to preview some fights because we've gone so lengthy. I'm going to shorten the previews. If you're watching this on YouTube and you see the description, you see it's talking about a couple of about multiple fights here, but I'm going to limit it to two for the sake of time. Uh, so also I can bring everybody into the conversation. Um, the big fight, uh, one of I'm really looking forward to this fight. Finals of the World Boxing Super Series Super Lightweight Tournament. Regis Prograis, uh, Josh Taylor. I don't care about the belts. It's for it all. It's for the mantle of best 140 pounder in the world. Fights taking place this weekend over in England. I am amped up about this bout. I can't wait. Um, about as close to a 50-50 fight as you can get. Um, both have attributes. Both are very good fighters, in my opinion. Fight's going to take place in London. You can see it on the zone. Uh, WBA, IBF, IBF junior welterweight belts. I know Ramirez has the other two belts, BC and BO, uh, Daniel. But to me, these are the two top dogs at 140 pounds. I'm leaning towards Taylor, but Progress, if you're going to argue for Progress to win, um, I can't push back much. Bottom line for me, I'm glad this fight has finally happened, and I'm really pumped up to see what goes down.
Exactly, yeah, because there was a time where we thought this was not going to happen. And we remember Regis Prograis took legal action against the World Boxing Super Series. And it looked like it fell through. Luckily, got back together. Now, when you look at this fight, you have a good point. Like, I know we talked in the beginning when it came to Beterbiev. We gave him the mantle, like him the best of light heavyweight because he had two belts and then a new championship. It's a different case when it comes to like Jose Ramirez. Jose Ramirez, he's a good fighter. He always packs an action fight. Like he's guaranteed sell out in Fresno, obviously. But Prograis has been in a way his mandatory for a while. And that fight never seemed to materialize.
For me, you can't put Ramirez as the top dog in the division where Progress was his number one contender, and they basically avoided him.
Exactly. That's one of the things and it that falls into it. And with Josh Taylor, I love the way he fought against Ranchik. It was very well, very executed, and it showed a lot of the range of skills that he has. If I had to pick it, I would probably pick Prograis because as good as Josh Taylor is, as good as his defense is, as good as his hand speed is, as good as his footwork is, Prograis has a little bit more of that dog in him. In this sense, because of that, because of the whole Ramirez situation, because when it looked like it fell through, that was his first target. I want to fight Ramirez. If this was fall through, I want to fight Ramirez. So I'm going to give it to Prograis. Now, obviously, you're going to do it in enemy territory. We know it's the UK. We know UK can do some home cooking once in a while. But I have a feeling that Rougarou will pull it through. And at that point, especially when it comes to seeing who's the best, at that point, then Ramirez can't avoid him.
Going to you, Gail. Rougarou, Taylor, October 26th, London, DAZN. Who you got?
Sign me up for that all day, every day, anytime. I don't care where they are. Really a good matchup. This is the kind of fight, not every fighter, no matter how skilled, gets. There are a lot of guys who never meet a challenging 50-50 opponent at exactly the right time. When they both are in full possession of their talent and their skills, they're not too young, they're not too old. Uh, they are in the right weight division for each other. This is one of those rare occasions. We need to celebrate it, enjoy it, wish them both well in the effort. I do think it's, although Taylor, I think, will give a terrific effort. He will make Prograis work for it, but I do think Prograis will prevail. And I do agree. I think he's a hungrier fighter. He's the younger. I think he's got a few more tools in the toolkit. I think he's also more creative. I think if he's the kind of guy that, he finds himself, you know, caught in a burning building or floodwaters rising, he's going to figure a way to wiggle his way out of it. And literally he has. He's not only fled Hurricane Katrina, he had to flee Hurricane Harvey. I
Hell,
don't
dudes out here, dudes wrestling alligators and whatnot. So I can see why people think he's that.
yeah,
He got that. He got that pit bull
yeah,
in him.
he does. He does. I think, I don't think he's afraid of a whole lot. And that, we talked about that at the top of the show between Beterbiev and Gvozdyk. And that attitude will take you a long way. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I agree with everyone else. I do think the winner becomes the true, top dog of this division. I really do. And, I hope Mr. Ramirez is watching, taking notes from the sidelines because they're coming for him.
Indeed, I lean towards Taylor, slight lean, very very slight lean by a hair. I like his height. I like his speed. He's a low key good body puncher. Um, but I can understand why Gail and Daniel are favoring Rougarou. Who you got, Jacob?
I got Taylor. Um, I don't disagree with a lot of the points that the panel has made, um, except for one. I think Taylor is also hungry. I don't think that Prograis is more hungry than Taylor. I think if anything, they're equally hungry. I think they equally want to prove to everyone that they're the best. And we can all agree that the winner of this fight should be considered the top dog. Prograis for me, he kind of reminds me of Teofimo Lopez in a way, where he's a hard hitter and he's had a lot of success early, but I think his defense has a little bit lacking. And he did get hurt, even though I think it was a little bit after the bell, by I think it was Relic that hurt him. I want to say it was in maybe like the second or third round or something like that.
He got stunned by Relic at the very end. I want to say of round number 2.
Yeah.
2 or 3, but it was at the very end of a round. He
Right.
got, yeah.
What and the reason I bring that up is that you can have all the skills in the world and you can be a hard hitter, but a big aspect of boxing is how well can you take a punch. And so what that showed me is that he can be hurt. And I'm not saying that there's no boxers out there that can't be hurt, but because he sometimes leaves himself exposed and he is hittable, I think Taylor can exploit that and use his quick hands and use his skills to potentially, hurt Prograis, and which could lead him to victory. But it's a very close fight, and these are like the perfect fights that you want to see get made when they get made. Both guys are at the peak of the powers, undefeated, and there's belts on the line, even though that's not ultimately super important, but there's significance to this fight, and both guys want to put on a show, and both are out there to prove that they are the best. And so there's no there's no reason that there's not really going to be a loser in the fight, because I think it's going to be a very close fight, and we could be in line for a rematch, or a trilogy with a lot of these top guys. Especially if they lose a close fight. If there's no reason they can't run it back. And even with some of the people that they've already beaten, like Paranchek and whatnot, who won his last fight. So I'm super excited for this. I think the Super Series has done another excellent job with their season of these tournaments, and it's very satisfying when what they were able to do and put on such a like I said, a significant pick'em fight as this at the time that they've done it.
Two young, hungry fighters approaching their peak, belts on the line, significant bout, showcase bout, has all the makings of being a really good one. Let's hope it live up to the hype, because if it does, it's going to be one of the fights of the year. Let's move on. Final fight we talk about before we begin to shut things down. Fight taking Prograis and Taylor taking place on the 26th. Also on the 26th, this fight is happening in Reno. Shakur Stevenson fighting Joet Gonzalez for a vacant WBO belt. Belt vacated by Oscar Valdez, is moving up to 130 pounds. The interesting thing here, Gail, is that the backstory here is even more intriguing than kind of outlining this fight on paper in terms of a technical standpoint. And what I mean by background, Stevenson is dating Gonzalez's sister. There's been some back and forth talk between them about how Gonzalez feels about Shakur Stevenson dating his sister. Going to be bad blood coming into the fight. So you know that both fighters are going to be motivated. Gonzalez is going to be fighting mad. But take all that aside, I just think that Shakur Stevenson is just the overall better fighter. He's going to prove it Saturday night in Reno.
Well, we're going to find out, but they're going to have some extra motivation and emotion on the line. They are not taking this well at all. Essentially,
it's kind of sad that it's happening. And how does this put Gonzalez's sister? She's got to be just the gamut of emotions coming into this fight.
Well,
I feel for her.
I feel for her. I feel for the whole family. She has made it pretty clear that she's chosen sides. She's standing with her man, Stevenson. The Gonzalez family feels this is traitorous. They've disowned her. Now,
yeah,
her brother claims, this all brought it to a head, and, for the good of the family, they had to cut communication. She's telling a different story on her side, that they had a falling out long before this. An extra little twist of all of this is, she also trains as a fighter. She's not a pro, but, they met in the gym at a point where way back when Stevenson and Gonzalez did some sparring back in the day. So it's all a big darn mess. Pick your favorite telenovela, soap opera. This is the real stuff. They can't make stuff like this up. And fighters, can be very emotional people. This is a sport that runs on a lot of adrenaline, emotion, drive. It's going to be interesting to see how both of their normal game plans are affected. Stevenson has the better pedigree. Stevenson appears to have the better skills. However, we should not sleep on Gonzalez. He's tough. He's determined. He won his last fight up at the AKA Dignity Health Sports Park here a couple months ago and looked absolutely great. I hope, just like Prograis and Taylor, we have a great fight. Both guys feel they gave their best at the end of the night. Come what may with the winner. And if it's that good, God forbid the whole family implodes, but we roll it back. So should be a fight well worth watching.
I'll go to you, Daniel and Jacob. Your thoughts on this fight? the backdrop being the family tension even adds more fuel to what we're about to see.
Oh my god, I did not know about the family thing.
Yeah, drama, man, drama. This is
Oh
better.
my.
This is better than a soap opera.
Oh wow, that is intrigue. That it's almost. I'll admit, it's almost as bad as the. It's almost as bad as the. How do I say it? As the whole situation with the remember the Garcia family, where the brothers actually did not speak to each other, even though they were next door neighbors. That is amazing to me that this is actually happening now. But as far as the fight itself, I agree with Gail. Stevenson has the better pedigree. I do think this is pretty much set up in a way where he'll get the belt. And that's obviously WBO, so he'll get matchups that are pretty favorable to him in that sense. I don't expect much of an upset, particularly now with the family drama, because he might be thinking too much about the family. The family might be thinking about the other things when Stevenson will be focused on winning and getting the belt.
Your thoughts, Jacob?
Um, I'm going with Stevenson in this one, but I don't think it's going to be as competitive as. It's definitely to me not a pick'em fight like the Prograis Taylor fight. I think Stevenson is really starting to come into his own, and I think he's gonna put on a pretty spectacular show, and I think he's gonna beat Gonzalez pretty handedly. Um, I mean, I would like to see a good fight, of course, but my leanings are that it could be a um, pretty clear victory. I think he'll stop Gonzalez. Stevenson seems to be on the fast track, and as you guys said, I think his pedigree is just a few notches above Gonzalez's. Um, so I mean, again, hopefully we'll see a good fight. But yeah, I'm going with Stevenson. And I also didn't know that the whole girlfriend thing, and it's kind of sad, because um, what do they expect her to do? I mean, yeah, she's part of the family, but what do they say? You can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family. So if she's dating the guy, I mean, you stand by your man.
Yeah.
And for those that want to dig into the gory details, just go look at their Twitter and their Instagram feeds. They
Oh dear.
whole thing out right there in public.
Oh dear.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Um,
you kids.
one final issue here. Shout out to Olaf the Mighty. Him who's in the chat right now. He has a request. I'm gonna show the question right now. He's asking. Um, I was gonna wait to talk about this fight next week in terms of recaps on the undercard of Prograis and Taylor. You have Derek Chisora fighting Derek Price. I mean, yeah, we have Derek Chisora fighting David Price. Excuse me. A lot of drama into this, particularly when it comes to Chisora and how he's been popping off at the mouth beforehand and mooning some people and trigger warnings and all. Yeah, him and his shenanigans and tomfoolery and as Daniel would say, rhymes with muckery, but the word starts with an F. Your thoughts on this fight, folks? Anyone?
I think he's gonna. I think Chisora is gonna beat Price for sure. Probably knock him out. Price, I don't know. He's just never been to me. He was kind of touted as a potential heavyweight hopeful, but he always seems to fall short. He's a big guy, lengthy guy, but he just doesn't have what it takes to what I think to beat a kind of a rising Chisora.
I'll go to you, Gail and Daniel. Any concerns in terms of the chaos of the Chisora camp and thoughts that early on in the lead up that Chisora was going to train himself? Come to find out, he's going to be trained by some guy, 33-year-old unknown guy, no head training experience. That anything about that has cause for concern from you?
No more than it would have him stepping in the ring in the first place. I mean, listen, this is just crazy ass fight. Neither of them at this point in their careers is, particularly distinguished. They both have some significant beatdowns on their record, enough to concern me. There's a 6.5-inch height difference between Chisora and Price. Price's size is probably the best thing going for him. But his resume is fairly questionable. I think that's the nicest thing I can say. His last significant fight was probably his fight against Alexander Povetkin, and we all know what happened there. He got knocked the F out. So, he really hasn't looked all that great since, despite, another law. And then he lost 6 months later to Sergey Kuzmin. So he's had some comeback fights since then. Had his fight with David Allen. I think it's going to be very, very ugly for him unless if he decides he's going to engage. If he thinks for some reason he can overwhelm Chisora because he's so much taller with such a reach advantage that he's going to try to go in and go after him. I think Chisora is going to make him regret that. If he decides he's going to make it a tactical fight, perhaps he's got a chance. I don't think he knows how to do that. So I think it's going to be one big hot mess in the ring. But I do pick Chisora in this fight. I do.
All things being fair, Daniel, you can't trust David Price's chin. He's been knocked down and knocked out too many times. Chisora can punch. You don't know about his mental state, given some of the crazy things he's said and done in the lead up to this. And honestly, if we're really gonna be honest, do we know he's fully recovered from that Dillian White knockout? I'm going with Chisora here, but I'm going with him by knockout, but there's still an unknown quality there for me. Your thoughts, Daniel?
Yeah, that's pretty much the mindset. This is a crossroads fight to me between these guys. Both of these guys are nowhere near, at this point, at this stage of their careers, going to be world title contenders. And both of these guys are probably going to be at the tail end of their career. The one probably saving grace, like we all mentioned it, is with all of the tomfoolery, I'll say it, tomfoolery surrounding Chisora's camp. The saving grace is the fact that David Price has the heavyweight version chin of Amir Khan, which is like a cotton candy chin. And that'll be probably a saving grace. If anything, to me, this fight is probably an audition to who's probably going to be the next person to face Usyk. Because, like I said, none of these guys are any real present danger as far as world champions. I don't see Chisora or Price lining themselves up, for example, to fight Wilder, fight Ruiz, fight Joshua, fight Fury. Even though, like, we know, like a few years ago, the big fight in the UK among like the tall guys was going to be Price versus Fury, but then we all know what happened to David Price. So I'm gonna pick Chisora because, like I mentioned it before, I'll say it again. David Price has the heavyweight version of Amir Khan's chin.
Damn. Some final comments here before we start shutting things down. Olaf said in the chat that he said Chisora is just read here. He said Price just dominated and stopped Dave Allen, who's ranked similarly to Chisora. Problem is, okay, fine, but it's still the factor of Price's chin. I can't trust it. He also said that Chisora is also training himself this time. When has that ever worked out for anyone? That's true too. So that's why that's the unknown question here in terms of this. Even
It's
though
gonna
I'm
work
going
out
with
this
Chisora.
fight.
EJ in the chat, he asked our thoughts on Taylor and Progress. We just talked about that. EJ is predicting a Progress KO. He's predicting it inside 12 rounds. Um, and yeah, I'll say for the record, I'm predicting Taylor by the slightest of margins, by a hair, to win a decision in what should be a damn good fight. Um, I think it's going to be so good they're going to run it back in a rematch next year. That's how good I think the fight is going to be. But yeah, I'm going with Taylor with this, and I think we're going to start to end the show on that note because we're running a little bit long. Because we started so late, we're ending it really, really late here. It's after midnight my time here on the East Coast, and with EJ and listening to us live from the UK, please, it has to be what 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. So I think we're going to shut things down. I'm going to go around the panel here. First, I want to thank Olaf, the mighty EJ Boxing Live. Had a very passionate discussion about the situation with Clarissa Shields yesterday on his show. I want to thank the brother for inviting me on to give my 2 cents. Uh, go around the panel here. We always begin the show starting with ladies first. We're going to end the show starting with ladies first. Gail from Communities Digital News. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk the media, because you do train and teach, you do media training and you also teach media as well. And part of my Let's Build Together November fitness challenge is going to start next month. Again, if you want to check it out, check out my online fitness page on Pound for Pound Box Report blog page. Bunch of programs, 2 week free trial that runs throughout the year if you want to try something on a 2 week trial basis. But anyway, get from Communities Digital News. For those who want to talk boxing or anything else, let the folks know where they can find you.
What a lead up. Holy moly. You can find my regular column. Yes, there's some of us that still write about boxing. I'm at Communities Digital News. That's COMM, Digi News, diginews.com. Glad I'm able to keep all you guys up late tonight. Thank you very much. You got to worry about your bedtime, but we'll tuck you in at the Pound for Power Report.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. Go to Jacob from Jab Hook Boxing. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk TV and film, because you do appear from time to time on the Wrong Reel film and television podcast. Let the folks know where they can find you.
Yeah, like always, thanks for having me on, and with esteemed people such as yourself and the award-winning Gail Falkenthal. But I also wanted to give a shout out to Daniel. I don't, I think his birthday was this month, maybe like on the 11th or whatever. So I want to say, happy belated birthday to Daniel.
Indeed, indeed. Send it to it privately. I want to say publicly here on Pound for Pound Box Report. Belated happy birthday, bro.
But yeah, I could be found on Twitter, JRATM23, talking, boxing and movies, and getting ready for, if you want to hit up the local fights here, I'm going to be at the StubHub, Dignity, Home Depot, whatever center, and for the Sosa Burchell fight. So yeah, hit me up there, and we'll have a beer together.
Last but certainly not least, Daniel from the Inscriber. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially Miami Heat. I know the NBA season it kicked off last night, beginning again tonight, and I don't know who is this Jones dude for the Heat who was dunking on fools tonight. I need some info on that. Yeah, for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially the Miami Heat, Daniel, let the folks know where they can find you.
Yes, folks, you can find me on Twitter, Raucus99. Me and my folks at ProBoxingNews.com, we're going to have to try to get the podcast reestablished. Our schedules have been insanely busy. I want to apologize to your fans in advance for not being able to get through last week. But the person you're talking to is Derek Jones Jr. He is, I think, right now a second, third year player with the Heat, and he is known for dunks. And he's actually one of the main reasons why Goran Dragic right now is not part of the Dallas Mavericks. He was part of the original trade that would have brought Jimmy Butler to Miami, but Pat Riley wisely did not want to give up Derrick Jones Jr., and he caught a body tonight. This time it is Jonas Valanciunas.
You're on mute, Mike, or I can't hear you.
Yes, folks, I think Mike is unfortunately on mute, or he got cut off a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Now we can.
Okay, go ahead. I lost connection there. I'm sorry. Um, for those who want to talk boxing with me, for those who want to talk music, for those who want to talk fitness, you know what it is on Twitter. Brother JR at Brother JR76. As I said at the beginning of the show, if you want to find out all things regarding Pound for Pound Box Report, the blog page is the place to go to. P4pboxreport.wordpress.com. That is the link. You check the top right of the blog page. You will find links to where to find us all over social media, where to find us on platforms that carry RSS feed. The links to the Cash Me and PayPal donate pound for pound boxing report, Cash Me and PayPal donations. You know the links to that. On the next episode, we will do a recap of uh, Prograis and Taylor. We will do a recap of Stevenson and Gonzalez. We will do a recap of Chisora and David Price. We may also talk about Erickson Lubin, who's fighting Nathaniel Gallimore, Robert Easter Jr. He's fighting Adrian Granados. And we would do a preview of the upcoming light heavyweight showdown, Sergey Kovalev, Canelo Alvarez. Canelo moving up 2 weights from middleweight to light heavyweight to challenge for Kovalev's WBO light heavyweight strap. Also on that same night, this fight is happening November 2nd in Las Vegas. Same night in Carson, California. The fight that Jason's going to attend at, I still call it the StubHub. Miguel Berchelli is going to be fighting Jason Sosa. That fight is going to be on, I think, ESPN. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jacob. Um,
Yeah,
and
ESPN.
and because this fight is happening at a funky day of the week, uh, middle of the week, we're going to do a preview a little bit ahead of time. We're going to preview not only in a way his fight against Nonito Donaire, IBF WBA bantamweight unification, the finals of the
Can't wait for that fight.
World Boxing Super Series bantamweight tournament. We're going to do a preview of that fight as well. So again, I want to thank EJ Boxing Live. I want to thank Olaf the Mighty. Uh, shout out to the homie Bo, who's often here on Pound for Pound Box Report. Shout out to my brothers over at 3Q Boxing. Full Gale from Communities Digital News. Jacob Jabhook Boxing, Daniel of the Inscriber. I'm your host, Michael. This has been episode 269 of Pound for Pound Box Report. Again, for those who are watching us live on YouTube, sorry for the late start. My apologies for that. I had to tend to matters beforehand. But yeah, episode 269, Pound for Pound Box Report. We will see you guys next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.
Good night.
good night, everybody.